Georget, and I'm a member of the Green Party of England and Wales Executive, and I'm also an oceans campaigner at Greenpeace. Today, we're going to be talking about the oceans as a global commons and the ways in which we Greens from all around the world can work together to protect our marine environment. We'll be hearing from our distinguished speakers about the issues in their regions, after which there'll be an opportunity for questions and then some closing thoughts from the panel. If you're interested in learning more about ocean plastic pollution, then I'd encourage you to check out the session on that topic that's happening after lunch. It was a great privilege for me in 2012 to coordinate the development of the Marine and Coastal Policy Chapter for the Green Party of England and Wales. We remain the only party in this country to have a set of comprehensive policies on ocean issues. And in that same year in Dakar, the Global Greens passed a resolution calling for the recognition of the world's oceans as a public trust and acknowledging the responsibility that we have to manage our seas for the benefit of future generations. Since 2012, life for the ocean and its creatures has remained blighted by the threats of overfishing, pollution, and climate change. But there has been some progress. In 2015, the new UN Sustainable Development Goals adopted 10 targets around ocean protection. And in Paris, oceans were recognized for the first time at a climate COP for the vital role that they play in climate regulation. 2015 also saw more of the ocean protected in a single year than ever before. And last year, the world's largest marine reserve was created in Antarctica. So there are causes for ocean optimism. And that's hugely important. Not only do the oceans cover over 70% of our planet, but they contain 80% of the Earth's biodiversity and store 16 times as much carbon as land-based ecosystems. Every other breath we take is thanks to the sea. The ocean supports every second job on this planet, and almost half of the world's population is dependent on the ocean for their food. The ocean sustains us, as it sustains all life on Earth. As the noted marine biologist Dr. Sylvia Earle is fond of saying, we should protect the oceans as if our lives depend on it, because they do. All that remains for me now is to introduce our speakers, and it's really an honor to be up here with such an incredible lineup of green ocean champions from all over the world. Alexis Georget is the president of the Green Party of Madagascar. Mohamed Fares is the leader of the Green Party of Morocco and has political experience in coastal development and pollution. Linnea Engström is a member of the Swedish Green Party in the European Parliament and vice chair of the Fisheries Committee, where she's working on legislation governing the behaviour of the EU fleet outside of EU waters. Judith Giblin is a youth representative of the Green Party of Fiji and a technical assistant at the Geoscience Division of the Pacific Community. And finally, Ernest Kolly is the president of the Preparatory Office of the Greens in the Solomon Islands, and here is a representative to the Asia-Pacific Greens Federation. Please note that our first two speakers will be speaking in French, so please use the headsets provided for translation if you need to. Thank you.
Mesdames et messieurs.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear Green friends, good morning. It's an honour for my Green Party of Madagascar to present here as president of the party, but also on behalf of the Green Federation of Africa, of which I am the vice president, to take the floor. We are the fifth largest island in the world, with a great deal of fauna and flora, which is very rich. In our region, climate change is very important. We have important, intense maritime trade and an important, solid tourist sector. In view of the preponderant role of the ocean in the country, I would like to mention the environment in general. First of all, it involves an awareness raising for the good of everybody. It's something which concerns everybody, and it's a global philosophy. We are seeing a global transformation of the planet. Biodiversity, climate change with its nefarious impact on the environment in general, with, for example, the melting of the glaciers, deforestation, and also contamination of all types, which means that our planet is greatly endangered and we have to protect it for the good of humanity. So here I would like to fervently call on on everybody to work together throughout the world to save our planet while there is still time, so that our future generations can find a place on it. For millions of years, the ocean has been a natural phenomenon, a seat of a natural phenomenon, which has changed gradually or with violence at different aspects of our planet. It occupies 3/4 of our continent, and so it's natural that its preservation should be a priority for humankind. There are many warning signals which are sounding, for example, disasters caused by irresponsible fishing and the gradual depletion of sources. The seas are a true source of life for humanity, providing an important part of the nutrition for the population. Then we have ocean pollution with nefarious impacts on humanity and the disastrous impact of climate change. Fishing. Let's turn to fishing. Throughout the world, man works through aquaculture, and this is growing to respond to the demands of a continually growing population. We are seeing the depopulation of species, while man doesn't really weigh up the environmental consequences of its activities at sea. The wealth of the ocean can only be maintained when biological laws are respected. If some marine species disappear, others also do the same because of the chain of species involved. Today, protection of the oceans is of primary importance to safeguard the ocean milieu and the life of the planet. There are so many species in the oceans, but there's also a very important process of degradation of the maritime conditions. People thought that the seas could never come to an end, that they could never be completely undermined. People have perfected different ways of killing species. Faced with the growth in the population and a depletion of resources, man has stepped up its exploitation using more and more sophisticated, ingenious methods. So fisheries, which is a prehistoric activity, has become a truly bloody type of industry. So the future of it as a resource is now affected. I think there has been a prophetic quotation that I can mention. If man can actually respect the reigning order, it will need to refrain from undermining the oceans. The oceans are large enough to absorb so much waste. But now what we're seeing is the oceans going beyond their capacity, their carrying capacity in terms of waste. We also have ozone and carbon emissions, and its absorption of these. So we have to recognize that the planet where there are large amounts of water, it's the origin of all life and is essential for life itself. But it's only been given to us once, and it will never be given to us again. At the end of the 20th century, we entered a phase of shortage of water and a deterioration of water and oceans. Now, technology seems to be the only weapon used by man to deal with its needs. We are not responsible for the terrible threat that exists, but there is great negligence. And now, in terms of effluent, we have refused to accept or to apply serious legislation to halt pollution of our different ecosystems. And we will, if we do not change that tendency, our children will accuse us correctly of sacrificing their needs. And it is future generations that will pay the price of lack of action. There has to be a race to protect our planet. For tens of thousands of years, the seas have inspired people and has involved and made them think of a balance, a life balance. In December 2015, keeping climate change to less than 2% was accepted. On COP2, there was some further progress. If this is not achieved, there will be dramatic consequences. The 21st century has seen the 14 or 15 hottest years for over 50 years. There's been a fluctuation of 0.3% of temperatures, and it could move from 0.5%, that is the temperature of the water, and between 1996 and 2005, there was a 10% increase. In the year 2000, the temperature of the Arctic, the surface, was 2 to 3% higher than in the last 50 years. And predictions from the Americans state that it could go up between 2 to 5% centigrade. The largest coral reef, which covers 310,000 kilometers in Australia, is threatened with extinction because of the rise in the temperature of the water and acidification of the oceans. The warmer the water, the more volume there is, and this is leading to the melting of glaciers in the Arctic, and also raising the level of the sea waters. There's been an increase of 10 centimeters in seawater levels. According to NASA experts, an increase of 1 meter is inevitable in the next 100 to 200 years in the Pacific, the Marshall Islands and the Polynesian Islands. The Maldives are threatened with disappearance, according to CNRS in the year 2000. Another consequence of the rise in the seawater could be Miami, New York, Tokyo, Singapore, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Venice, and so on being flooded or even covered. In the face of these predictions, the Bikini Atoll inhabitants already claimed political asylum in the United States. We are talking about global warming, and which is increasing at the same time as the atmosphere. Oceans and seas directly impact on global warming. There's an evaporation of water. Steam actually contributes to an acceleration of climate warming and therefore water evaporation. Oceans also play a role as a carbon sink. It seems that their role of absorption is becoming more and more important. This is extremely worrying because the constant CO2 pumping of CO2 into the atmosphere can only go on at its current, based on its current rates, according to the CNRS. In terms of global warming, will also affect the oxygen in the ocean, which will go down. The warmer the water it is, the less oxygen there is. This affects the biodiversity of the maritime milieu. Therefore, action is needed to restrict an increase in the temperature of the water with terrible consequences for the environment. There has to be action around fossil fuels. A great deal, some time will be needed to move to transition, a clean energy transition. Here we propose a court recognised by the international community to judge environmental crime and pass exemplary sentences. We think that such crimes should be considered crimes against humanity. Solar and water energy sources have to be increased and have to increase in importance. For example, there have been nuclear catastrophes in Chernobyl. Illegal overfishery has to come to an end. There have to be serious sanctions to repair the to provide redress. To redress the crimes that are being carried out in environmental terms. Certain areas have to be restricted to artisanal or small-scale fisheries to recognize those ecosystems and so that they can be a source of sustainable livelihoods for the inhabitants. We have to create a network of environmental protectors for each individual country coming together at international level to protect their vital sources that are vital for their nutrition, and also to protect their flora and fauna, including the illegal trade in resources, natural resources, as in my country. Illegal fisheries must not go on. So I conclude by saying that illegal business lobbies are creating fear in our hearts. They're trying to impose their laws, but this is not something inevitable. We have to fight back against them with the support of our governments. The Greens are ready to accept this challenge and work together with all of goodwill to save the planet for the good of everybody. Our planet is in danger. We have to continue to take steps in this respect to protect future generations. Let us take all the steps necessary to protect our resources and ensure that the planet's survival. Thank you.
Chers amis,
Dear friends, good morning.
My name is Mohamed Fares, and I'm the coordinator of the Left Green Party in Morocco. And this is for the first time that our party is officially taking part in the Global Congress. We're a young party. We were actually established in 2010, so we're a young party. We come from a group of militant activists from Morocco from the 70s. Many of us have, experienced a lot of developments in our country. Morocco, of course, developed with the beginning of the new century. We had the constitution now of 2011, and since then we've been very involved in activism, in institutions. I do apologize, I'm just going to get some water.
Je disais donc que nos...
As I was saying, we've decided to become active within institutions. We took part in municipal elections. We stood candidates both locally and regionally, and we are actually represented in some of our municipalities. And we actually have a member of parliament in the first chamber.
Le sujet...
Now, the subject matter that we have been asked to address this morning together is our coastal waters, pollution, development. That is what we're addressing here. And we've been given a certain amount of speaking time for this introductory part in particular, and I'm going to use that time to tell you what exactly we mean by a coastal area and coastal waters. This notion of coastal waters should be quite straightforward for everyone to understand. It's basically a space that links the earth to the seas and to the atmosphere. I think you know that just as well as I do, if not better. But that definition, of course, can vary. You might be a biologist, you might have your definition, you might be a geographer and have your own definition, or you might be a lawyer and have your own definition. But broadly speaking, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a strip of land where the atmosphere and the sea come into contact. If I may, I would like to send out some key messages here and now, and then later on we'll have a discussion, we'll have an opportunity to exchange. And I also want to make it clear, I'm not just going to be talking about coastal areas in Morocco. I think we should talk about the concept of coastal areas generally, and perhaps talk about the Mediterranean more specifically. You know, of course, that coastal areas and coastal waters are an asset. They're a resource. It's a major space for development, of course. By development, I mean town planning, I mean industry, I mean fisheries, I mean tourism, I mean aquaculture as well. And of course, aquaculture is something that's gaining a lot of ground, so to speak. And there was a real kickstart to this at the beginning of the century on our continental waters, but now we're really talking about more and more development in our coastal areas. So, in other words, it's an asset, it's a resource that's been generated. Of course, it's not without a cost, because actually this form of development has led to imbalances, a serious imbalance in our environment. I talked about town planning or urbanization earlier on. That's one aspect. Tourism and tourist facilities, the over-exploitation of natural resources, whether you're talking about the land side of things or the sea side of things. And that, in turn, has consequences. We have industrial waste being poured into our waters. We have domestic waste also entering our waters, and so on and so forth. So these are the main messages that I wanted to share with you to sort of kickstart the debate, and I'm sure we'll have ample opportunity to exchange ideas and to discuss these things together. And I hope that at the end of the day we'll emerge from this general idea to something more specific and to something that we can defend around the world as activists, all the things that we need to do in order to protect this resource and this legacy, this heritage of ours, its economic, social and cultural. Thank you.
Good morning, dear conference participants. My name is Linnea Engström. I'm a member of the Swedish Greens and also of the European Parliament, and I'm a vice chair of the Fisheries Committee. I was also told to be quite brief to kickstart a debate with you, so I'll be quite brief, around 5 minutes, and then we can also move on to the discussion. Life began in the oceans, and life will always depend on them. My work in the European Parliament really evolves around ocean governance, to stop the overfishing, to increase transparency in global fisheries, and to connect with local communities and industry for a better future for all. Human rights and gender equality are really at stake when we talk about fisheries. Women are crucial for food security in many countries which the EU has fisheries agreements with. But their work are rarely recognized. They process and sell the fish at local markets, but their work is invisible in the official and local economy. And they face very harsh challenges when having no access to final resources or technology, and this just for being women. Human rights abuses are also very common in fisheries. In fact, whole industries might depend on them, as with the case with Thailand. The oceans are emptied of life to feed the Thai shrimp industry, and poor migrants from Myanmar are kept as slaves on fishing vessels, sometimes for years. Here, the EU has done a very good job with its IUU regulation in detecting atrocities and putting real pressure. A red card means a total export ban to the EU market. And I don't think today we have a better tool to raise both environmental and labor standards worldwide. This year, 2017, is really the year of the oceans and the seas. For the first time in history, the UN has dedicated one stand-alone goal to the oceans, the SDG 14. To conservation and sustainable use of ocean, seas and marine resources. My home country, Sweden, together with Fiji, has taken the initiative to co-host the first UN Ocean Conference in New York, the 5th of 9th to June. The conference will create a platform for all stakeholders, civil and knowledge society, even the business community, to show their strong engagement and pledge concrete and voluntary commitments to step up the work on preserving ocean, seas, and marine resources. Let me here also mention the green victory we've had in the European Parliament on the management of the EU external fishing fleet. For the first time, we will have a better knowledge on who is fishing what and where. The EU Commission is setting up a register where, on a green initiative, also the beneficial owner is going to be published. This is a huge step to show what is really going on in this sector that used to have basically free access to our shared commons. We know that piracy, illegal fishing, and human rights abuses are very common. The high seas will be better protected, and we have made it very hard to conclude private agreements with poor coastal states that ignores EU standards. Abusive reflagging are to be prohibited, and you have to have a clean track record of compliance to be able to get a license, among other things. I'm very glad to say that I, as a Green MEP, work very closely with local communities, for example in West Africa, whose livelihood really depend on marine resources. But I also work very closely with the fishing industry. It's not always easy, but with global competition, We've managed to have an agreement with the industry to say that the only way the EU can compete is with raised standards, higher environmental concerns, and better labor conditions. Our oceans and seas play a crucial role in our lives, and we all have a really important role to play in preserving them. Thank you.
Bulavanaka. My name is Judith Giblin, and I stand as the daughter of the Pacific, representing the beautiful archipelago of Fiji. The Pacific region is home to 14 countries and 8 territories, with its area comprising of 98% ocean. 98%. The ocean provides the Pacific people food security, transport, economic development, employment, and a sense of cultural identity. Pacific Islanders eat 3 to 5 times more fish than the global average, with 47% of coastal households in the Pacific earning income from selling fish. For some Pacific Island nations, commercial fishing access fees contribute up to 60% of national revenue. The threats to oceans are prominent in the Pacific, with pollution, unsustainable fishing, tourism, development, and climate change evident from our shores. My country, Fiji, has placed great importance on addressing climate change. I am proud to say that the COP23 will be organized by Fiji and hosted at the UNFCCC headquarters in Bonn, Germany, and also in June 2017, the UN Ocean Conference held in New York, with the governments of Fiji and Sweden co-hosting. Good governance is crucial to ensuring our oceans remain sustainable. Policies such as the Framework of Pacific Oceanscape gives a Pacific regional plan with actions and initiatives for an area of approximately 30 million square kilometers of ocean and island ecosystems. It is an approach to ocean management that includes clear goals and activities within a framework to track progress and enhance accountability. This framework for Pacific Oceanscape builds on and strengthens the Pacific Islands regional oceans policy that promotes sustainable development, management, and conservation of marine and coastal resources in the Pacific. This framework for Pacific Oceanscape functions to protect, manage, and sustain the cultural and natural integrity of the oceans for present and future generations and for the broader global community. The term sustainability in regards to ocean is always ever more linked to sustainable fishing. The Pacific Islands Forum Fisheries Agency, FFA, comprises of 17 member countries which manage, control, and develop tuna fisheries since 1979. FFA has facilitated regional cooperation to ensure this multi-million-dollar resource of tuna remains sustainable for many islanders' livelihood in the Pacific. The parties of the Nauru Agreement, PNA, controls the world's largest sustainable tuna purse seine fishery, with its efforts focused on sustainably managing tuna. The PNA member countries agree to a limited number of fishing days within the year, and with these allocated days, the countries sell it to the highest bidder. In a way, the Pacific Islanders reap economic benefits from sustainable management of tuna. Finally, the Pacific Ocean Alliance was established in 2014 under the Framework for Pacific Oceanscape. It was formed to bring strengthened coordination and collaboration across stakeholders on cross-sectorial ocean issues. The Pacific Ocean Alliance is facilitated by the Pacific Ocean Commissioner, Dame Mag Taylor, who also is the Secretary General of the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat. The Pacific Ocean Alliance is a network of private, public, and civil sector representatives acting together to advance approaches to integrated ocean management. These policies and agreements are part and parcel of what the Pacific has made to ensure that our oceans, our livelihoods, remain intact and present for future generations. Oceans has largely been influenced by climate change. The stance from local, national, and regional positions has always placed importance to address this global crisis. People are doing what they can to impart knowledge and initiating outreach on the challenges and heartbreak that follows the losses caused by this. Please allow me to end my speech with this touching poem written by a mother from Marshall Islands. Tell Them, by Kathy Jitnil Kishna. Tell them about the water, how we have seen it rising, flooding across our cemeteries, gushing over the seawalls, and crashing against our homes. Tell them what it's like to see the entire ocean level with the land. Tell them we are afraid. Tell them we don't know of the politics or the science, but tell them we see what is in our own backyard. Tell them that some of us are old fishermen who believe that God made us a promise. Some of us are more skeptical of God. But most importantly, tell them we don't want to leave. We never wanted to leave. And that we are nothing without our islands. Thank you.
Warm Pacific greetings to you all. My name is Ernest Kolly, and I am the president of the preparatory office of the Green Party of Solomon Islands. The Solomon Islands is no exception to the impact of climate change that affects the health of the ocean and human health. The ocean plays a vital role in the Solomon Islands' socio-economic development. As a member of the parties to the Nauru Agreement, which accounts for about 50% of the global patient skipjack supplied for canned tuna, the PNA countries controls the world's largest sustainable tuna patient fishery. The storm of massive challenges for small island nations like the Solomon Islands culminates from the collapsing fisheries due to the impact of climate change, to pollution of the ocean, from plastic waste to ocean warming and ocean acidification. We are also threatened with natural disaster because of a location within the Pacific Rim of Fire. So we are prone to natural disasters, and which also affects the ocean. The issue of illegal, underreported, and unregulated fishing also threatens our ocean. Development in terms of logging and mining companies, which results in sediments flowing into the ocean or the reefs, also threatens our ocean and our livelihood. Population increase, resulting in unsustainable harvesting of our marine resources, also threatens our ocean. And of course, pollution, plastics, waste oil from vessels, etc. This threatens the vulnerability of the fragile marine ecosystem of the small island developing nation or states like Solomon Islands of the Pacific Islands, which relies on the ocean for its socioeconomic development and livelihood. The Pacific Ocean is the largest of the world's oceans. It connects our sea of islands and connects us to the world. Our reliance on the ocean means that sustainable ocean management must be a priority for small island developing states. United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 14 gives the Pacific Island countries like the Solomon Islands and territories an opportunity to holistically address issues related to oceans through multi-sectoral partnerships and integrated approaches towards implementation of SDG 14 targets. Ocean governance issues have been highlighted in most Pacific events recently, and the need to employ an integrated approach to decision-making related to ocean. A stronger commitment from leaders is required to improve linkages between local, national, regional, and international frameworks. Given the vital importance of the role of the ocean in terms of the socioeconomic development of small island nations of the Pacific Islands had declared 2017 as the Pacific Year of the ocean. And the Blue Economic Conference for the Pacific Island countries will be hosted by my country, Solomon Islands, in August this year. This calls for more collaborative effort by all stakeholders, governments, and private sector and civil society of the Pacific Island countries and territories to focus on the importance of the health of the ocean and its impact on the health of our nations and people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ernest, and thank you to all our speakers. We now have time for some questions. You'll see that there's 4 microphones around the auditorium. If you have a question, please go to your nearest microphone. There's 2 on this level and then 2 at the back up there. Please queue up next to your nearest microphone and I'll do my best to take you in order. I think I'm going to take 3 questions at a time. And please, if you're addressing it to a particular member of the panel, say that, or else we'll throw it open for everyone to answer. I'm first going to go to microphone number 2 over here.
Thank you. I'm Chai Kaliwar from Planet Earth, and I have a very small haiku which I want to say before I ask the question. The haiku goes something like this. Lord created this planet 70% for the fish, but 2 monkeys hijacked it. My question to Pacific Islanders is this. You're talking of Pacific and the rising of the sea and so on, but I haven't heard anybody talk about the rising radioactivity level because of Fukushima in Pacific in particular. Have you any experience with the rising sea level, rising radiation level in the Pacific, and if you can comment on it? Anybody who knows. Thank you.
Thank you. The person at microphone number 1, just here.
I'm Francesco Ferrante, I'm coming from Italy. My question is for everybody, but maybe Linnea, as member of European Parliament, is more interested on. In Italy, I am a former senator, and in Italy we introduced a ban on plastic bags from 2012 now. Plastics are, as you know, one of the problems for ocean and Mediterranean, one of the biggest problems. And with this ban, we introduced a ban not banning biodegradable and compostable plastic bag. But with this ban, we already achieved to reduce for half of the plastic used for bags in Italy in these last 4 years. Now European Parliament is voting on a circular economy directive and package like this. And don't you think it's useful to have banning the plastic bags all over the world? We have already about 50 countries that are using these instruments. Obviously, improving bio-based other material and biodegradable and compostable. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have some questions coming in from social media, so I'm going to take one of them now as well as our 3rd question. So this is a question from Mark Whalen, and he asks, are climate repair and ocean cleanup potential major job-creating industries for the coming decades? So we have that question, a question on Fukushima, and then a question on plastic bags and the circular economy that's mostly for Linnea.
In regards to Fukushima nuclear levels, radioactive levels, in the Pacific, it's not a crucial issue at the moment. We have not seen any issues of radioactive health issues in our countries. So no, particularly no, in regards to the Fukushima event, there has not been any illnesses caused by that.
And maybe just to add on with Judith's answer, I think the threat could be still there. And given Fukushima or Japanese location within the Pacific Island region. And so that's the threat that we, the Pacific Island nation, or small island nations, are very much also concerned of, because as I have alluded earlier on, that's the gold mine that we are relying on for socio-economic development. And so any impact on the ocean which will impact or affect the tuna resource, which we rely mostly, would definitely affect our socio-economic development. So that's the threat that lies with us, the small island nations of the Pacific. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question on plastic bags. This is, of course, a major threat and a challenge for healthy oceans. And I'm going to Varanasi this evening, starting my trip there, because India is, as you might know, one of the nations who has banned plastic bags. When it comes to the EU, every member state has goals to reduce, and I think in Sweden, I know it's 100 plastic bags per person, and in other member states there are a lot more. I think we still need plastic bags. One very good tool is to put a price on them, basically. So when you go and buy groceries, you pay a little bit, and then that immediately gives you an incentive to save money, because not to take a plastic bag that is for free. But if we think about food waste, it's quite good with plastic also, because you can wrap it and it contains, and the food stays longer fresh. So we can't ban them all, but of course we need to severely reduce plastic bags. And my personal hope is that the EU Commission will release a legislative file later this year on plastic bags and plastic in oceans, marine litter. Yeah. And maybe something on the ocean jobs. I think that the circular economy will have the potential to create many, many jobs, but we can't forget the fact also that we need to reduce the amount of fuel that we use when we go out at sea, because that's also a very, very has a bad impact on the ocean. So maybe to put some effort into recycling plastic more, and that could be a very good, create many jobs.
Merci.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to come in and say something about sea rise and also plastics. In terms of sea rise, which has been predicted, if the situation continues as it is, will attain 1 meter, height of 1 meter, as our friend has just said. Not only will we see the disappearance of islands, which is a disaster for humanity, but this will also have an effect on the equilibrium of the biological ecosystem of the coastal areas, and will increase the salinity of water and water sources close to the coast. In terms of plastics, before COP in Morocco from the 1st of July 2017, there is a law banning the use of plastic, and this legislation incorporates advances despite people actually selling plastics illegally. I think this is where our awareness-raising work comes in, because it's good to introduce legislation, but if the population doesn't act correctly, we will not succeed. So our role as Greens, as environmental ecological parties, and I'm going to refer to Morocco, the civil population has to take action to create awareness in general amongst the population. That's extremely important. If most people don't have an environmental awareness, so well, we're referring to the coast. If the population living along the coast do not have this kind of awareness, you can create institutions, but you will never combat the scourges that can destroy the environment.
Thank you. I too would like to say a few words about plastics. It's true that we have to eliminate plastics. We have to act immediately. I don't think we should set quotas. But if you want to eliminate plastics, you need to also plant a lot of trees, because the paper that is going to replace the plastics will of course come from cellulose, and for cellulose you need a lot of trees. You need to grow a lot of trees to make sure that you produce the amount of paper that you need to produce these paper bags. And that's something we have to start with straight away, no waiting. On Fukushima, I think there was a question from the gentleman over there on Fukushima. Yes, it is really, really difficult, I agree, and we as Greens are opposed to nuclear energy. We're opposed to nuclear energy because it is a disaster for the planet. And the case of Fukushima, you know, it might be resolved in 100 years' time, 200 years' time. You know, I think we need to really do our utmost to prevent such disasters from taking place in the first place. Rising sea levels, another major problem. We have melting glaciers all over the place. We also have rising sea levels, we have the salinity problem of our sea waters and acidity also in the water. And this is a threat to all living organisms in our seas, and the phenomenon is growing at an alarming rate. Then, moving on to marine cleansing. We talked about that a moment ago. Ocean repair. You have to also remember that ships are discarding waste illegally into our seas. So we're not just talking about plastics and plastic bags, we're actually talking about vessels from developed countries which are using the seas of the south, and those are the countries of the south where there are no controls. They use that opportunity to basically dump their waste. They're dumping waste in these countries which are unable to control the situation. In Madagascar, for instance, there's always, you know, some ship out there. It happens to be a really old, obsolete vessel. It is rusty, and constantly it deposits all sorts of waste. And we're not able to remove all that waste. It is a catastrophe. What developed countries are doing to us is absolutely catastrophic. They're just dumping their waste on us.
Thank you. So I'm going to take the speaker at number 1 and then the speaker at number 2, and then I'll go to another question from social media.
Okay. My name's Diana. I've come here from Wales today. We've got the second largest landfill of marine plastics. I have a little jar with me that was picked up in an hour just on our national trust, I can't think of the words. It's a national park, basically, and, this is what we're finding all the time. My question is what are the panel and the international community doing about legislation of the fishing nets? We get rope in all the time. That's breaking down into microfibers. The plastic smog, the really small plastic stuff that we can't pick up. We're just pioneering a system here on our coast now that's only the second in the UK, first in Wales, to get rid of these microplastics. But this is actually suffocating the plankton, which we've already got a 50% drop in, and it's also suffocating my children and everybody else's. So I want to know what's happening about that.
Thank you. The person at number 2.
Yeah, Chris Philpott, Leamington Warwick Green Party, England Wales Green Party, and UNA member. Seems to me that there is a threat from technology with industrial fishing, but also technology could be used to monitor, if there was a legislative framework, that could be monitored by satellites and other technologies that I probably don't know of, to make sure that people who offend, particularly with overfishing, can be caught. So I think we need to use technology for this purpose, and we need to have more effective legislation so the culprits are picked up. And I think I'm delighted to see that the UN is moving into this area, because we're looking at countries that don't have a lot of resources. They're not like the UK, they're not rich countries. So they need all the help from the world community to stop overfishing, stop pollution. And I think countries get away with things, and it's unnecessary. So I'm interested in what the panel say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. A question from social media from Ed Davitt. He asks, are the panel optimistic that we can enforce good ocean governance in the face of existing economic, political and social pressures? That's kind of a big question. So we had a question on marine plastics and what the international community is doing, and then a question on using technology to monitor fisheries as well.
Yes, I'll start because I felt really approached by that. It's very easy to ban microplastics on a national level. We've done that as well. The real problem is to get rid of microplastics. It's everywhere. It's getting into fish larvae. I'm sure we have a lot of plastics in our bodies already. But the international, I know for a fact that this is going to be a huge topic on the UN conference, of course. We know that one of the biggest polluters in my country is the microplastics that comes from tires. And we really need to have those kind of tires to be able to drive our cars on icy roads. And also from those microplastic rugs that you have when you play football. So some of these polluters we can do something about, and I think it's easy to ban in cosmetics and other stuff like that. We can do that easily, but the main polluters are a challenge to really find a solution for. But I think we're a bit slow. Also in the EU, we have some resolutions on microplastics that we should ban them, but the major obstacle is how do we do this? When it comes into the oceans, plastic never, how do you say, biodegrades in water. It's really challenging. I'm positive, I'm optimistic. We have a new resolution last 2 weeks ago on the use of space technology that's already there, the infrastructure that is connected with space technology to be able to monitor fisheries. And this could be a cheaper way to provide coastal states in the developing world with some really high technology documents, let's say, to be able to monitor, and for the activists, for the environmental organization, for local communities to put some pressure, some real pressure on their governments. So I'm quite optimistic. We also did something very, very important 2 weeks ago. We had an important vote in the Fisheries Committee to stop subsidizing fishing fleets that are really not valuable to anyone, basically. And they're just contributing to overfishing and environmental degradation. So I think small steps in the right direction.
To add on to the technology, I think I would agree with Linnea, and I agree on the question, the person who asked the question. I think that's the direction now. Like in the context, I will only talk in the context of Pacific Island countries. I think in terms of our patient fisheries, we have 100% coverage of reporting and monitoring. But in terms of long-line fishing vessels, that's where the problem is. But we are into electronic monitoring. This is compounded due to so many issues when we talk of long-line fishing vessels. And so yes, technology now is a way forward to address this, especially for us small island nations where we do not have the resource to monitor, especially the issue of IUU within our source. And it is a concern for us now, with due respect to my friends from Vietnam. There are these blue boats. Three of those boats have been arrested this week in the Solomon Islands. They're doing illegal fishing within our EEZ. So these are some of the problems that we have faced. So yes, I think technology now. Now the question and the challenge for us small island developing states is how can the legislative framework part of it, component, to be incorporated into our Fisheries Management or Fisheries Act that will enhance the monitoring and regulatory framework of the monitoring of these IUU fishing vessels. So yes, I agree on the technology. I think that's the way forward for us. Thank you.
Bon, merci. Est-ce qu'on est optimiste?
Are we optimistic? Yes, we have to be optimistic. We also have to work to achieve the results that are in line with our beliefs, our convictions. The activists, environmental activists in general, and parties are convinced that they have to mobilize to revisit production modes of natural resources and also consumption methods. That is where the work lies, even though that really represents a job for the entire society. We are the people that will move this forward, and we have to take action around it. So we are optimistic, yes, and we have to really work to achieve this. In terms of the legal framework, it doesn't refer only to fisheries. The legal framework applies to all sectors. I've mentioned this, and I would like to mention now the legal framework which concerns the coastal strips. In Morocco, for example, the coast, in terms of the coast, we worked from 2008 to achieve texts which refer to France in the year 2020 and the 20s, and now this has become a statute of the coastal strips, which are excellent. But they do have to be implemented. It does have to be implemented. You should know also that there are many problems with regards to this legal framework in Morocco. There are 8 different ministries which bring to bear or which work around the coast. Many departments whose work concerns the coast. So if there isn't integrated work around this legal framework, achieving an integrated management, coastal management plan, this will all be in vain. Therefore, the problem is not easy. It's easy on the one hand, but it's also complex. There's a lack of legislation in certain countries, but the implementation is what takes a great deal of time.
I too would like to respond to 2 of the points raised. The first one was in answer to the social media questions we just received, whether or not we should be optimistic. Well, yes, we are optimistic. If we weren't optimists, we wouldn't be in this room. We have to be optimistic to be here. And I think that that's our job as Greens, to draw up legislation at the highest possible level, to implement legislation, or at least help implement legislation. That should be our quest. That is what we're here for. You have to be optimistic if you want to change anything in this world. There was another point which had to do with technology to monitor fishing and overfishing. As I said earlier, you can't dismiss technology. I mean, you can't do anything without technology, to be honest. But you also referred to fishing nets, and I think that brings me back to what I was saying earlier on in my introductory statement. Look at the mesh sizes in fishing nets. I think it's the mesh size that we have to deal with and that we have to scrutinize more closely. You know, are these fishing vessels complying with standards or not? It'll depend on the mesh size. And like I said, there's also the bycatch issue. They're fishing for calibrated fish. If the fish that they get is not in accordance with that caliber, they throw it back into the sea. Bycatch, reject. And that's a real problem because that bycatch could be of nutritional value for the local population. But for the vessel, the fishing vessel, it's not economically viable. So they just throw it back into the sea and it's a complete waste. We must ban this practice. That's why we need to set up a guard, a coastal guard or guard at sea, that will check all of this, because there's fishing happening not too far from our coastal areas, not necessarily in the open seas, but also deep sea fishing. Anyway, all sorts of fishing happening which is completely out of order, and it's a catastrophe. I think you need to look at like I said, the fishing nets, the mesh size, and everything that they do, because these are crimes against humanity, and that is what we should call them. What they're doing is wreaking havoc with our seabeds. They're destroying our seabeds. And it really is of paramount importance for us as Greens.
Thank you. So I see we have 3 people standing for questions. I think if we're really quick, we can get through those 3. Other people have just stood up. I don't think if we're really quick, and I would say also, if anyone has a question on marine plastics, I would appreciate leaving that for now, as we've had some questions on that, and there's a whole other section on marine plastics after lunch. So if we're really quick, we'll get through the people who were already waiting. The people who've just stood up, are you happy to not have your question asked, or should we try and get through them really quickly? We'll try and get through them really quickly, and if the panelists can try and answer quickly as well, that would be great. So I'll go to the person standing at microphone 2 first, and then 1, and we'll kind of alternate, but try and take them all at once. Thank you.
Oh, hi there. My name's Claire Calashone, Bristol Green Party, England. Now, as activists, environmentalists, NGOs, Green parties, we talk about protecting the sea with marine reserves, protecting 20 or 30%. But I would like to draw your attention to an idea that this is actually far too little. There's an idea on the table that we could overturn this paradigm, and rather than just protect a percentage, we should actually protect all of the ocean. So in this way, fishing, shipping, oil exploration could be allowed, but only in responsible ways. And we wouldn't be having protected areas within exploitable seas. We would have commercial use areas within 100% protected seas. Now, considering that the entire marine environment is already protected by law, such as the law of the sea and the Convention of Biodiversity, we would essentially be implementing existing international law. And the panel have already talked about advances in technology to tag and track ships, and enforcing the law is possible right across the globe now, even in the remotest seas. So, panel, I would like your thoughts on that. And I would also like to just draw attention to the fact that there is a summary, there's a proposed motion to amend Green Party policy to include this idea, to bring it in line with this idea. And there will be a motion coming up, hopefully in a year's time at the next spring conference. So if anybody from the England and Wales Green Party would like to comment on this, it will be on the Green Party website, and I think it is actually there in the archives if you look for it.
Thank you. Thank you. The person at microphone 1, and if we could be quite quick, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Okay. My name is Uiko Hasegawa. I'm co-representative of Green Japan. The protection of fishery resources, Japan is very responsible in this field. So, and we Green Japan recognize our heavy responsibility on the protection of tuna, eels, and whales. So what do you want to from Green Japan?
Okay, thank you. We'll go back to 2.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah. I'm from Morocco, from the youth of the Green Party of Morocco. As an environmentalist and also activist, I want to ask a question to Mrs. Linnea from the Swedish Green Party. So you were talking about some policies and new laws about controlling illegal fishing. I was wondering if it's a kind of integrated management of oceans or just policies or new instructions. Thank you.
Thank you. And number 1.
Je suis Sadia Bouhbouh de Parti
Sadia from the Moroccan Green Party, and I would like to talk about something that has been overlooked, which is the sand, coastal sands. You know that everybody is rushing to use it, to exploit it, and this is a really billion-dollar business. If it's all removed, there'll be many beaches that will disappear, and indirectly it will cause disturbances to flora and fauna. This is so greatly neglected as a subject. What is being done about it by the Greens to fight against this this robbery of this gold? Actually, sand is a precious resource.
Stand 1.
Peter Scapa, UK, London. My question is directed to Mrs. Engström. If she thinks the EU fishing quota system works well, if she does, how she reconciled it with alarmingly low levels of sea bass, for example, in North Sea? Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't think we have time. I'm sorry. So the 5 questions, 2 for Linnea, 1 about the illegal fishing policies, and 1 about is the quota system working in the EU. And then we also had a question on flipping the paradigm so that 100% of the ocean is protected and then extraction is permitted. And then there was also a question about what we're looking for from Japan, and a question about coastal sand and it disappearing. So if the panel could be speedy in your responses, thank you.
Okay. I'll be speedy. I'll try to be speedy. Maybe just a quick comment on the protecting of the oceans. I mean, we should remember that if we manage our resources in a sustainable way, there is no problem with fishing, for example. We have this very famous discussion in the EU system on FMSY. That's the sustainable level that we sort of agreed upon, that if we fish on values of FMSY, this is a long-term way of harvesting a resource that is sustainable, actually. The problem is, and let me refer to the quota system, now we have co-decision between the Council and the European Parliament. The Council is still not respecting our co-decision, the decision that we took together on the Baltic plan, for example, the Baltic Management Plan. So we have very strict ranges, and basically they should always, when they go above FMSY, when they put higher quotas, they should always explain it. They still don't respect these values that we have in the basic regulation of the common fisheries policy. So overfishing is definitely still going on a very clear way in the EU system, and it's the member states who are to blame, basically, I would say. So it's I'm not. I'm really critical, and this is it's also an institutional battle between the European Parliament and the Council. And well, I think we should take them to the European Court, because and that's what I'm trying to push the rapporteur of the Baltic plan. Yeah. Just very quickly on the legislation I was talking about. I was talking about two. One is on the illegal, uncontrolled and unregulated fishing, and that's working very, very well. I think we as Greens should be more promoting this kind of things that the EU is doing, because they're doing it very well. We have very many examples of countries regulating their fisheries, managing now their resources in a sustainable way after getting a yellow card according to the IUU regulation. So please look into that. That could be very useful in if you want to be positive of the EU project. We're still doing some terrific things. Actually, the legislation I'm working on is a refit of the fishing authorization regulation, and the thing we managed to do now is severely to increase the standards. So to do it very much better and more, let's say, stringent, and we added some really good stuff as well on the beneficial ownership, for example. Yeah, maybe I'll stop there.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to mention or come back on the question of the sand that was brought up, sand extraction. Yes, indeed, sand, as you know, is the third most important resource used by man after air and water. It may seem paradoxical. It also represents an $70 billion business, international business. And so if there is not protection of sand extraction legislation and control in 100 years, all our beaches will have been wiped out, will have disappeared. So I would like to give you some examples. I think that we do not have much time now remaining. The UAE, for example, have depleted their entire sand stocks. In India, 8,000 sites are affected. Clandestine sites are in 8,000 sites exist, and 45% in our own country. And in Florida, there are 9 out of 10 beaches which are in the process of disappearing. So these are statistics which aren't reflected in policies generally, but I think we have to take account of these facts as Greens and provide a contribution to ensure better management of this asset, which is the third most important product or resource used by man.
Thank you. I'd like to answer the lady's question first, the one who put the question from microphone number 2. My answer is yes, it's true. We don't do much. We don't do nearly enough. Why don't we do nearly enough? Well, because we don't have enough Green MPs in Parliament. So we need to encourage each other. We need to encourage everyone around us to vote Green. That way, we'll get a voice, and our voice will be heard in the institutions that take these decisions. Because otherwise, you're quite right, madam. There's not much we can do. We try. Of course we try. I'm so pleased to have an MEP here with us. I know that this MEP is doing her best, her level best, to try to improve things. But of course, if there are very few MEPs of our family, then the prospects for success are limited. Then we've heard from Morocco, and what's true for Morocco also holds true for Madagascar. I'm talking about the sands issue now. There is a lot of sand being exported. Rio Tinto, the Chinese are involved in this trade, and it is a disaster for Madagascar. I mean, they're stealing our sand, for one thing. And they're also, destroying our roads and not repairing our roads in the process of stealing our sand. So this is a problem, and we have no control over the situation. They're actually, conniving with the government, partners in crime, and that's why, unfortunately, we have a disastrous situation. We must stop this.
Would anyone like to briefly answer the question about Japan? What we're looking to Japan for?
Yeah, I think that question from Japan is a very interesting question, and Japan being one of the big players in the tuna industry and marine resource has a lot to offer. And in the context of the Pacific small island nations, I think we are working on some strategies to liaise with some NGOs which they want to work in partnership with the government of Japan in enhancing research as well as fisheries management. So I think that opportunity is there, and for us, the Greens, I think there are a lot that Japan can contribute to this, to managing of sustainable management of the fisheries. An example is like at the moment in the context of electronic monitoring for the fishing longline fishing vessels in our context in the Pacific, for Palau and Masala, for Palau especially, they are linking up with Japan, and Japan is working in partnership with them. So these are opportunities that we should also explore, and in terms of research and technology, I think these are also avenues that we can explore in developed countries like Japan, which has the resource and technology to enhance the management of this tuna resource, especially. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernest. I just want to add on for the coastal sands and how it is very crucial to many Pacific Island countries. For instance, most portion of the Pacific Island countries are atolls. So these are islands made from coral reefs, and it is made from sand. So the issue is on mining and how the poor utilization and understanding of how you mine a certain area, there's an erosion right next to it because the waves just take away like a portion of the coastal area. So in a way, coastal sands has not been properly managed in the Pacific Islands. And that is a crucial aspect we will look in the future, because removing a portion has an influence or a factor on the other portion of the island. So this is definitely a factor we are looking into. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you to all of you for your questions, for being here today. I'd like to thank all of our speakers here for coming and sharing their wisdom and insights with us. Thank you very much. And we now have some announcements, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe what I'm going to announce is not for you, but for your delegates who will participate in the Global Greens session tomorrow morning about resolutions. Please tell your delegates that the emergency resolutions who have been presented are at this moment online on the website. So you can read them and make your opinion about it. Your delegates have the opportunity to present even amendments on those emergency resolutions until 8 o'clock this evening, not later. And then we will have a second session for the resolutions committee with the delegates who are willing to participate at 6:30 in room 12. 6:30 in room 12. And so that's the last occasion to wordsmith even before we go to the marathon Sunday morning from 9 o'clock on. Haha.
Thank you.